So this is the very first vlog I've done in 4 years, and it's also the very first one I'm doing directly on YouTube Live because I don't wanna bother with recording separately, uploading it, editing, whatever. This is pure, raw, unfiltered, unedited footage. So, yeah, and I honestly don't even know I'm not doing this for other people to watch, to be honest. I, if other people watch, that's great, but I really felt this tug last night. I couldn't sleep, and this doesn't happen often, so the fact that it's been happening more often these days, I'm just like, I feel like God's been telling me to do things that are uncomfortable. I'm like, "Okay, I'm just gonna go for it and see where it goes." So I'm doing this out of pure obedience, knowing that I feel like God told me to record this. If not for one person out there, then for my future self or my present self or whoever, whatever. But I just know I got to do this. And so I will say, so last night, part of what sparked this was because I fell into a YouTube rabbit hole, as one does. And I came across my vlogs that I used to do every month in Australia. So, many people who know me, I lived in Australia for a little over a year, which is crazy because I feel like I lived multiple lifetimes there. I just experienced so much growth and experiences and lessons and the transformation. I was watching these vlogs and I was like, oh my gosh, like that girl had no idea what God had in store for her, what God was doing already in her. And one video in particular, I mean, a lot of them really, but um, it really stood out to me because I remember that one. So the title of it is like, if you're going through a hard time. And I just remember I wrote that because I was going through a really hard time during that season. Just to be even more transparent, I forgot if I even mentioned it back then, but I was going through like severe loneliness and feeling lost and questioning everything and depression and like why God, like why did you send me here if it's so hard to find friends and community and fit in? I've been trying so hard to like find people and purpose, and I was just feeling really like thrown off and not myself. But I'm really glad. And so I don't say I have regrets because usually, like most of my life, I'm like, no regrets. Whatever happens, happens, and it's all part of the story. It's all for a reason. All the things that have happened in the past led me to who I am today. So I have no regrets. But if I did have one regret, it would be that I didn't vlog more often these past few years. Because I look back on those Australia vlogs and I'm like, this is so cool to be able to see so clearly now, like now that it's been 4 years, how much God was working back then and using that, those struggles, those things I was dealing with for my good, um, for his purposes. And I can see very clearly now in hindsight. Hindsight is always 2020, but yeah, it's just like so cool. And I remember even back then, even though I was still raw, like processing that, people were telling me it was encouraging to them. And now I look back, I'm like, wow, like back then I didn't even know how that would help people, like let alone so how much more could it impact people, the more I do it and the more I look back, I'm like, oh, like that's exactly where I can point out and see very clearly God's faithfulness in coming through in ways I never expected. So, yeah, I had a lot of different emotions watching those videos because I was cringing a lot. Like, why did I talk like that? Why do I look like that? Like, why? I'm just like questioning myself a lot. I know 2 years from now or 4 years from now, I'm going to look back on this video and think the exact same thing. So, yeah, I'll probably be in a totally different state of mind and life season and be like, wow, she had no idea what she was in for. And that's how life is, right? But the other emotion I felt was so much gratitude. Like, wow, look how far God has brought me in such a short amount of time. Only 4 years. That's like going through college. Like, but just I barely recognize the person in those videos, to be honest, like in a very good way, because I feel like I've grown so much that God has helped me to He's just taught me so much and helped me grow even more. And I know we're never going to be perfect. Like I struggle with so many things still today, but just looking back and being like, wow, but God brought me so far and taught me so much and took me on these paths I never knew would happen. And just being so grateful for how God orchestrated everything. So one example I'll just share is because of that season of loneliness that I was in when I recorded that video, I especially remember, and I look at the date and I was like, literally right before I had met my now husband Alex, who you can see from my background. We are married now, 2 years to about a little over 2 years now, which is so crazy. But yeah, back then I didn't even know I would meet him. But I remember being very lonely and lost. And part of that too was also like questioning, like, am I ever gonna find someone, God? Like I'm really banking on you. Like I really feel like I'm supposed to put my trust in you, that you will provide, you will bring me to the right, bring the right person into my life, because I want to be with the right person, not just any person. I want to be the person with the person you have for me, that I can be on mission for you, for that I can serve you and glorify you together with. But I don't know, maybe it's too good to be true. I had my doubts, for sure, especially when I looked on social media and I saw like all these couples and everyone's in a relationship, and I'm like, what about me? I feel left out, and did you forget about me? But that in combination with having a hard time finding a church community or friends, and I was like, God, if you sent me here and your heart is for us to find community, why is it so hard? Like, I don't get it. But and then I started, having these doubts that are totally from, the enemy being like, well, something must be wrong with you. Maybe you're unlikable. Maybe you're too much, like just all these things that like are very not true. But back then, like when you go through hard things, like if you're not, if you don't know how to choose out of those thoughts, which I really didn't know how to do back then, it just invades and you have like all these negative thoughts about yourself. So but I remember God used that, and I talk about this so much now, which is weird because I look back and I'm like, oh man, I had no idea back then. But I talk about how that period of time, specifically that window, was one of the most transformative times I ever had, like a turning point in my life, because of that loneliness, like confusion, wrestling. God used that to draw me closer to him than ever before. I had a deeper intimacy with him than I had ever experienced, because I had nothing else to stand on or use as a crutch. And so, even community is a great thing. Friends are a great thing. But I realized in that period, it was when I didn't have those things to almost like escape to or rely on, that I realized, oh, the only person I have right now is God, and I really need him. So I feel like he causes desperation and pain and hardships in our life, or not causes, but he allows those things to happen so that we literally have nothing else to run to or medicate ourselves with or escape to. And we're forced. I mean, we're not forced, because he always gives us a choice, but it just like focuses us in on the importance of being like on a strong foundation that's not any of those other things, if that makes sense. So yeah, I always like point back to that period, because I remember, in regards to relationships, it was through like deepening my relationship with God, going on solo dates with God, and talking to him, learning to listen to him more, and learning to really just dwell in him and find my value in him, and not what I could produce or help other people with, not in leadership positions, not in even being a good friend, like all of that was stripped away. And just had to come face to face with realizing, wow, I need to be enough as I am, and I am enough. And what does that mean? And how can I just be content in God? And God really used that to teach me. I was fully content. I came to a point where I was like, God, I would rather be single for the rest of my life and serve you with my whole life, however many years you decide to give me, decades from now or whatever. We're not guaranteed even tomorrow. So whatever time I have left on this earth, I want to spend it serving you, regardless of relationship status, even though, my desire is to be with somebody, is to get married eventually. But I don't need somebody to fulfill me. I want to live on purpose for you right now and be completely content in you. And I truly was. I was so happy and content to live my single life and just do whatever, I felt God calling me to. And then so ironic. Yeah, I said I would rather be single for the rest of my life and serve you than to be with the wrong person, and not be serving you, and to be with that person out of anxiety or fear or whatever. But yeah, it's just ironic because then I met Alex like literally right after that period, and he actually had been going through something very similar separately on his own But yeah, that's just one example of how when I look back at these videos, I'm like, wow, I am so encouraged, because if that happened back then, it means it's happening right now too. That God is working in ways we can't see. God is doing a bigger, he's his plan is so much bigger than we can perceive or even imagine for ourselves. And not just that, but like our flaws and our weaknesses are actually like allowed. We're designed to be imperfect, to not okay, I don't want to get into like the theological mess, but you know what I mean? Like we are designed to need God. We're designed for a relationship with him. And so the ways that we're imperfect, we're flawed, we struggle all the time, and we will always struggle. We will always have flaws on this side of eternity, but that's meant to draw us towards him, to draw us to him, to know that we need him. We can't just do it on our own. No matter how much the world tells us self-help, like do everything your own on your own, no matter how much that's being sold to us, the truth of the matter is we can't do it. We can't do all of it on our own. We're human beings. We're flawed. So yeah, I just feel like that's an encouragement I got for myself. And if anything, I hope that encourages you or my future self watching this, that if you're in the process of something, if you're like, why isn't it fixed yet? Why can't I get there? Why can't, it's like so much shame and condemnation that the enemy uses against us. Like it's a good intent to want to grow, to want something to be right and just and fair and whatever, or to get to a certain level. That's a good thing. But I think the enemy, this is something I've been realizing more and more, especially today, after I went to this women's conference at church. And my main focus was just to be there to serve, to pray for people. I was on the prayer team and I love praying for people. So if you need prayer or you want prayer, feel free to comment or reach out to me. I would love to pray for you regardless of who you are. But yeah, I just felt the sense of all these people are struggling with something very similar I've been struggling with, that I feel like God's been convicting me of, that even spiritual perfectionism can paralyze us. Like I know it's easy, we always say like perfectionism can hold us back from living and just like be free. But I think we don't realize how that also applies spiritually. Like when we are trying to be spiritual perfectionists, we're putting unrealistic expectations on ourselves to be perfect, live righteously all the time. And it's like, it's not that we shouldn't live righteously. We should. That should be our aim. But we shouldn't expect ourselves to be perfect all the time and to not fall and stumble sometimes. Like that's why we need God's grace. That's why we need his mercies anew every day. And yeah, if we had everything fine, then we wouldn't need him. So yeah, but I think so often we try to fix things on our own. We try to like why aren't you like faster at progressing or growing, and why do you still deal with this? Like just get over it. And we're so harsh on ourselves. That's not how we would talk to a friend. When we talk to other people, we're so much more compassionate, understanding, patient, loving, and be like, it's okay. Don't be so hard on yourself. So we need to treat ourselves with that kind of patience, compassion, and just it's not about being perfect. It's just about persisting and persevering and continue going. Like you will stumble, you will fall, and you will make mistakes. You'll get some bruises. You'll maybe accidentally bruise other people and without your intention. But the point isn't to give up and be like, oh, I'm so terrible, I shouldn't even try. The point is to just get back up, know that God's got you, and you can keep going. And it's actually every time you stumble and fall, you actually learn and you get stronger. And God is using all of it too for his purposes in ways that you can't even imagine. So yeah, I hope this encourages somebody, because that's been kind of what I've been realizing more and more. And that's what I've been sensing God, especially. I mean, there's been so many things. I might just do more of these, because honestly, I feel like I have so much bottled up in me that I like just need to get out there and hope, maybe God will use it to help other people. But that's been something really big that I've been feeling, that so many of us put pressure on ourselves when we just need to be patient with our process. We need to be trusting that what God is doing in us it's at a certain pace for a reason. It doesn't mean we should just like be lazy and be like, okay, whatever, but just have grace for yourself, because God already gives you grace. And so it's ironic because my name is Grace, and everybody always makes that joke of like, oh, just like I pray for God's grace over you. And it's like, oh yeah, haha. But it's like, how true is it that we need God's grace? And not just we need it, we already have it. We need to give ourselves the grace that we already have, and we need to receive it. Just because God gives us something doesn't mean we have it inside of it. We need to actively receive. So yeah, I hope that helps. And if anything, I'm just recording this because I'm like, wow, I need to do this more. I need to document what I'm learning so that people out there, and if not, just my future self can be encouraged. And yeah, there's so much more, but I'm gonna leave it at that. So hope this speaks to you. And